9 o'clock. I'd like to call the meeting of the Select Board to order on March 19th, 2024. First thing, additions and deletions to the agenda.
We have a few. One is the discussion about sewer abatements guidelines. Another will be a short-term rental update, and the third will be a roadside marker for Prosper Farm as well. Yes.
And then I have one for just the update for the local options tax.
Okay. Anything else?
I hope not.
Good. Citizens' comments. You have one up there?
I don't see any online.
No. Okay. Managers report.
Yep. So first, I'll say the police chief is supposed to join us today, but he had to have a medical situation, not serious, but he won't be able to make it this morning. So we'll try to get him on the next meeting. A few things. One, a village meeting and election is today. So if you are village residents, I encourage you to come out to vote. There is a contested election for the trustees. Then also tonight at 7:30 will be the village meeting. And at 7, they're having kind of a social to kind of encourage you to come get together, talk, and then stick around for the voting at 7:30. Next, there'll be a joint meeting of the board of the select board and the trustees on the 27th to get a short-term rental update from the planning and zoning administrator based off what the planning commission has been working on the last few months. So I encourage people to attend that. If you have any questions.
Time 6, right?
6 p.m. I believe, yes. And if in the meantime, if any board members want more information, please reach out to planning and zoning and they can kind of give you the information we have so far. There will also be a planning commission hearing Monday at 7 p.m. 2 days before that on March 25th, which again, they'll help public comment on the potential ordinance that'll go in front of the boards. So again, encourage people to attend that as well. This is the last of many meetings they've gone through on the subject, all of them in public. So I encourage people to attend if you have any questions or concerns. Finally, on some good news, Stephanie Applefellow, which is a newish planning and zoning administrative assistant, recently went to a course in Michigan. She took a test yesterday and passed. So she now has a zoning administrative certificate from Michigan State University. So we're all very happy with her. It's going to allow her to do more stuff internally, help the town. So just want to point out all the hard work she did on that and her dedication to us. And hopefully we'll see some more good things from her going forward.
Okay. No, police chief. So sewer abatement. First one is Kevin Memphis and 97 Woodstock Road.
So on page 5 of your booklet, you kind of have their email laying out what happened. When we received the address originally, their address was incorrect. So when we put it in our system, it was incorrect. And that's why they did not receive a bill.
I'm always the naysayer on these, so I'll just say my piece and you all can vote against me. At closing, one of the attorneys prepared the transfer tax return with the wrong address. And that certainly wasn't the property owner's fault, but someone should have also told them about the sewer bill. So I don't see that the town made an error here because they were given an address by a third party that was not correct.
Is there a motion one way or the other? Somebody's gonna make a motion.
I move we, in this case, because there was an error, I would move that we approve the Statement request for 125. 50 cents.
Is there a second?
Someone can make a second and then
We can vote it
we have a
down.
voting and vote down
Yeah.
as well. So making a second is not necessarily agreeing to.
I'll second it.
All those in favor? All those opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Hey,
So you voted not to approve it. So you now prior to want to vote to,
All right, so now we have to vote.
We have to make a motion.
yeah, I'd say vote to not approve it. Because the motion was to approve the motion, not to deny it. So
All right, so is there a motion? Is there another motion?
Move we deny the request.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
so the next one,
No, you had to click on the digital version,
Oh.
like if you clicked on it,
I
it became
figured it
clear,
out,
but
so.
the two-person household, they're being charged as a family rate and they request an update, the status.
Going forward, or,
Yeah.
I think I think they're meeting for this sewer bill that is currently due, that got sent out on February 6th.
I moved to change it to a single family.
is there a second?
And I just quick, move to single family for this current bill or going forward?
Going forward.
So they'd pay this bill as a family rate, then after this, it would be,
yeah, because
Okay.
we have known,
Yeah.
they're making a change.
Seconded?
I'll second the motion.
All those in favor of making it was it two-person rate as of next year's sewer bill? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. One High Street.
the next is, they can convert a two-family residence to a single home. They're currently paying two sewer bills and want that changed to one sewer bill
Moving forward.
moving forward.
Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion.
One second.
Okay, so the motion is seconded for changing One High Street going forward to next year's sewer bill. Make it a one single unit bill. All those in favor?
Aye.
Oh, okay. Aye.
Did you have a comment you want to make? Okay. So the last one, is kind of the typical situation we face with the way we do our billing. So basically someone bought a property, this past August. The sewer bill they receive based on the way we do our billing is for basically the previous August all the way up to that August. When they went through the closing, it seems attorneys did not fully realize how our sewer billing works. So they, I believe, I put in a small credit in the closing, but not the full amount. This is the Blue Horse Inn that they're turning into a residence. So the sewer bill that the resident got is for basically the previous year before they were there, as when it was being used as a bed and breakfast or an inn. It is now a single home. Historically, the board, since I've been here, has normally voted against these, blaming the attorneys at fault, not anyone else. So that's kind of the situation where we're at. I've talked to the attorneys, I talked to the residents on this, try to explain how we do our process, and despite it being a little outdated, it's how we do it. We have been doing it, and we don't have the capacity to change currently. But that's kind of the best background I give everyone.
Who were the attorneys?
Not me. Yeah, I think it's really hard when we have to base it on the water usage,
Yeah.
like catch up with these.
Yep.
So I just think it is something that at least most attorneys in this area, I think, know that it's always a year behind and there should be some adjustment in the closing.
Plus they should have received the water bill too.
So the water company, I believe, is bills quarterly.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, is there a motion?
I will make a motion to deny the request, but are they also asking for converting moving forward as well?
They're on water.
Turn me to so
Oh, okay.
automatically.
I'll make a motion to deny the request.
Is there a second?
Second,
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion made and denied. Okay. We want to do the liquor licenses all at once?
Some of them are tobacco as well, just so,
Yeah,
and tobaccos.
same kind of permit.
yeah, it's so, tobacco substitute, which usually means something along like an e-cigarette or vaping.
So do we want to do them all at once? You want to go from one at a time?
And just for, I understand the board's frustration on the way we get these from the states. I did reach out to our contacts. I believe you were on that email as well, Susan. And they're still kind of going through the same process they've been going through it the last year, which is we really don't get all the information. And therefore, the board usually approves these with the condition that the state's doing the due diligence on their end.
These have a little bit more, but not
Not much.
much.
Not much.
So. And there's only 4, so I would move we approve the Worthy Kitchen 3rd class and 1st class, based on the assumption that the state is doing due diligence on these.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. With the kitchen, yes.
And I will keep going. I
Yeah.
would move we approve Cumberland Farms of Vermont Inc. for their tobacco substitute and tobacco, based again on the assumption that the state's doing due diligence.
I'll second.
All those in favor? Aye.
We approve Shine Associates VT LLC for a 2nd-class liquor license and a tobacco license, again, based on the assumption that the state's doing.
Second,
I'll second. Oh,
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Move we approve Prince and the Pauper, 3rd-class, 1st-class outside consumption. Based again on the assumption that the state's doing due diligence.
Is
Can I
it-
just, do we know, with the outside consumption, do they have a barrier set up normally to block off?
They set up their tables in the back end of the alley, so they don't set up on the sidewalk. They set up.
There's a fence.
There's
The fence, okay, perfect. Because in the past, we've realized that the village has an ordinance that alcohol has to be behind a fence, and we haven't always followed that, so I want to make sure that we're. Sorry about that, continue.
I'm done.
there a second?
I'll
Second.
second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's fine.
The next one is ARPA funding. We talked about this briefly a few months ago, and we put it kind of on the back burner. We have gotten guidance from VLCT, and what they're asking municipalities is to allocate the rest of your ARPA funds by the end of March. And the reason behind that is April, the municipalities have to submit a new update to the Treasury Department on what has been allocated so far. This will be the last update before the general election in November, where there are some concerns on, depending on who wins, that they'll try to claw back any opera allocations that hasn't been spent yet. So the guidance has been, if we can allocate it by March 31st, so you can put it in the portal by April, then it should be safe from anyone trying to claw it back after the next election. So that's kind of why this is on the ballot now. I'll go over some recommendations that we talked about in the past and some new ones. And we also do have the joint meeting with the short-term rentals in March if the board wants more time to decide. And also, if you want to wait till April and, you know, take the risk, you're obviously more than welcome to do that as well. My recommendation, you would not. So last time we talked about allocating $70,000 to fully furnish the Carlton Hill Road updates. I think the board was in favor of that. We never actually took a vote on that. So I recommend that. David Green is here. He can speak to the tower estimate if the board wants to consider that. Give more detail on that. Mark Hunter would like to fix a lot of the sewer manholes throughout the town. The way they've been done in the past, they kind of pop up and they cause issues. So I have some money allocated for there. I'm also asking for the remaining dollar amount, which is about $20,000 for IT software internally for Woodstock. There's about 5 different things we could do today with that $20,000. We could have accounts payable software that hooks up to Nemrick. We could have payroll software that hooks up to Nemrick. We could potentially have some permitting software for fire, police, my office, and zoning. We could also spend it on making this more Zoom friendly, especially if the state government is going to require hybrid meetings going forward. So I think it does allow us to do some things that kind of help upgrade our IT infrastructure. So those are kind of projects I've laid out. Currently, the funding would be $19,500 for the tower estimate, $70,000 for Carlton Hill Road, $20,000 for IT infrastructure, and the remaining funds would be $16,044.97 for sewer manhole repair, is what I'm recommending to the board today. And if you have questions on that, or if you have questions about the tower, David Green is here as well.
Yeah, I do have a couple questions about the tower.
Me too.
Chief, you mind?
Um,
I can just at the podium, you come to the chair, whatever you feel more comfortable with.
Morning. So my questions are, this is a house panel and transfer switch.
Yes,
So the tower's on a generator?
No.
What's the transfer switch in a new panel?
we're gonna add the capability to a generator, because right now during a storm, I have to go all the way up to the tower to hook a generator. It'd be much easier, quicker and simpler to do it down where the meter will be, which will be right off the edge of the road.
And the internet cable for the repeaters?
Yep, so the way radios technology is working, they're all going to internet-based cable to do a lot of the radio work. I don't know how it works, but it just works that way. So we're not putting internet in, but we want to run the line and the conduit since we're digging anyways.
Except,
Might as well just do it and get.
anyone else? Any other questions?
Can you just explain the use of the tower and,
Yep.
you know, how it assists? Because I know like those of us that live in South Woodstock know that we're certainly not getting cell service from it.
Yep, so it has nothing to do with cell phone. What it is the primary antenna for police and fire in Woodstock and also surrounding towns. There's the main radio that's antenna that serves everybody. There isn't a secondary one down here in Blanky Cottage. But like I said, that's the main one that serves everybody in this area that the ambulance service services. So Pomfret, Bridgewater, us, we also use it in parts of
And my recollection was that there was talk about putting a regular cell tower in that, around that site that would allow for co-location of different services.
Yep, we'd love to have it up there, but it's too high. Actually, so the way cell towers work is you have an antenna sitting on a piece of ground and the signal goes straight out. It doesn't go down. So that will go above the village of South Woodstock, above the town of Woodstock. So pretty much everybody has pulled back from that plan. There's still some looking, or I guess one company looking at using angled antennas up there, but it becomes more costly than the normal straight antenna.
And my last question is, I assume the town has an easement and
Yes.
some kind of license to use the tower?
Yep, so it's actually ours, we own it.
Mhm.
We have an easement with the landowner who actually spurred this, that because the existing power line is direct buried, and And it's actually starting to come up in the ground in spots, and they use hay equipment. They have cattle or horses, whatever out there. And they're worried that it's either gonna degrade over time or get caught on a piece of equipment, because it was installed in the, I think, middle fifties. So it's been in there for a while.
And some of my questions have been answered, but the cell tower, I think would be a great option if we could do that. If that were to happen, is the power line big enough to support cell?
Yes, yes, cell towers use very little.
Right, but I just want to make sure that,
Yep.
you know, that if we could have one, I understand that the signals go out more horizontal than down, but there is a possibility with the technology we got now, we could eventually someday, have that capability, which would be,
Yeah, we're putting in 150 house amp. And we don't even use 15 amps of power. So our tower uses very little, the cell tower we use very
so
little.
there'll be sized wire big enough that we could add
Yes,
to this.
yep.
Yeah, we can.
It's kind of thin up.
Who?
Sounds good.
John Spector.
Oh.
John?
Hi, just a quick question. I assume that there's no way to, or sorry, is there a way to use the ARPA funds to pay for some of the upcoming infrastructure costs, like the sewer plant or the water acquisition or things like that?
We have allocated, not a lot, about $42,000, for the main wastewater plant. That was voted on, back in May of last year. We also allocated $10,000 to the South Woodstock beautification project. So to have right now, more money could be allocated to the wastewater plants. I would hesitate to allocate to the aqueduct just because we haven't had a vote on that yet. And that money would be set aside for a vote that could potentially fail. Hopefully it would not, but, so I wouldn't recommend doing that, but, it could be allocated to other things as well.
Okay,
Isn't the-
thank you.
The idea
Isn't
is
one of the
always
goals
spend
to
it.
get the money out of our account though? So
Yeah,
that
the
wouldn't
one of the goals
happen.
is to allocate it as quickly as possible and spend it,
Yeah.
quickly too.
Any other questions? Thank you, David. Right, so you want to vote on them one at a time or all at once?
Do people feel ready to vote?
I
or
would
do they
actually,
want-
if you go to one at a time, it's better for the track record for the treasury. And so there's one vote we have to do first, which is the board originally allocated $115,000 for the air packs. The fire department only spent $106,840.50 on the air packs. They were able to use some capital reserves and other things. So the first vote would just be to reallocate that funding from 115 to the 106,840.50.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So then we just go through the list.
70,000, I move we spend 70,000 of ARPA money for the Carlton Hill Road project.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Next would be the 19,500 for the tower.
I'll make the motion.
Yes.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
$20,000 for IT infrastructure.
I'll make, yep. I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And then $16,044.97 for sewer manhole upgrades.
I'll make the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So that takes care of all our ARPA funds.
Yes.
Okay. Right, so before we get into South Woodstock plant, do we want to
Yeah, talk
hear
about
about the
roadside marker.
marker?
I think people are here to talk about it.
Yes, hi, I'm Leslie, as Leslie Asquith, Piastra. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. My brother's here with us too, Paul. Our family has been working with the local history center and the historical commission and the current property owner of our grandfather's farm out in Prosper. to put up a historical roadside marker. We're preparing an application. It's for the ski lodge that our grandfather built in 1937. And it's still there, although in pretty rough shape, but it has been stabilized, maintained by the Forest Service, the National Forest Service, because it's on their property. And it's been twice nominated or suggested that it become a Vermont historical site. And that's been okayed twice, 1992, I think, and then 2004, but it never went forward. So what we're doing now is not working on that particularly, but we're starting with a roadside marker we'd like to have put down on the road near my grandfather's farm. And the State Historic Marker Program wants to make sure that the select board is aware of what we're trying to do and looks at the wording. I sent it to you. I don't know if you have it in front of you, but I did send some suggested wording. The application asks us to suggest wording for the marker, and then the state people will work with us to make sure that it's accurate and so on. So really, what we're hoping from you is that you will, if you have any objections or suggestions, we'd certainly love to hear them. And otherwise, kind of give your blessing to this project. It doesn't have to be approved by you particularly, but we'd like, the state wants to know that you're aware of it and you don't have any problems with it, I guess.
Thanks, Leslie. I have a question. I was just wondering, so I just want to make sure I understand that this is the first step in a few in order to get this named preservation site, and then also to hopefully bring the site up to or repair the site in a meaningful way.
That's exactly right. And I did make a mistake in my letter. I said it would be, we're trying to get it to be a national historic site. It would be a state historic site. But yeah, state, through the Vermont Historic Preservation Office. We obviously, yes, my brother and I and my family are going to we've gotten permission to clean the saplings from around the building. So we're going to do that. The rest of the maintenance, the repair of the floor and so on would take some funding. So we would have to apply for grants. And I don't know even yet what the process is we'd have to go through to get it declared a Vermont historic site, but that's our goal with the local historical society, the local historic commission, and we have all the approvals that we need from everybody. And we're waiting on your group now.
And then the other thing, and I apologize if you don't know this, but I assume that the Historic Roadside Marker Program coordinates with like our Department of Public Works or with V-Trans, depending on where the sign is located.
Yes, we submitted information about that. We looked at a site, we looked at their criteria, and we're suggesting a site just inside the guardrail on the left side of the road as you're heading toward Barnard. So it would be on the state road right-of-way, Route 12, I think that is. But the State Historic Marker Program coordinates with the local people to make sure that that's an appropriate site, and also it coordinates with them to install it.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? For a motion?
I would move we support the endeavor.
Is there a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And I'll just ask you to reach out to our zoning department to make sure the sign does not have to go through any committees, just so we're sure of that as well.
Thank you. And will I be able to get a copy of the minutes or something that I can send in with the application, I guess?
Yeah, Nikki will be able to send you the minutes when they're completed. She can send you the draft minutes in a few days. The official minutes won't be ready for another month or so. But she'll also send you the contact information for the planning and zoning department So you can talk to them too about the sign.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Stock and update.
Yeah, so we had 4 students from Vermont State University Randolph come out to the South Woodstock plant, and they took a lot of photos. Well, they were with their professor. They're in like a design engineer major, and they are, I think, almost ready. They're going to come the beginning of April to the working committee, and they'll have a model and all sorts of schematics and give us their ideas of how to make it look a little better. And we did give them kind of a fairly low budget of what we thought we could spend on the project, knowing that we would probably need to fundraise money in addition to the ARPA money we've been given. So hopefully in May, we'll have some ideas, and our next step would be to have it presented at a public hearing so other people could look at at several ideas and give us feedback.
Great. Thank you.
Did I get that all, Greg?
I think
Greg's
you did.
also on the committee.
Okay, scheduling future meetings.
Yeah, so I sent an email to both boards, end of last week. We have a few necessary meetings we need to attend to, which are the short-term rental ones, as mentioned before. The first one's next week. The second one we've talked about potentially doing April 18th. As a week afterwards is to start our Passover. We want to avoid having any meetings on a holiday. That meeting we can talk about scheduling on that end. But besides those two, there'll also be the standard trustees meeting and the select board meeting. I also am recommending at least 3 joint meetings as well. Those meetings would cover kind of an analysis of me on the kind of Woodstock and what I've seen over the last year and my recommendations going forward. The personnel policy presentation by myself and Nikki. And then the start of both boards kind of having a conversation about what goals they want for the boards, but also for the department heads, for myself, and for the committees that report to the boards. The second meeting would consist of department heads and the committee commissions coming to the boards, talking about their goals for the departments and the committees, their challenges, the things they want to see going forward. It would also include a personnel policy discussion by the boards, and then a continuation of the conversation about goals overall. The third meeting, ideally the last meeting, would be kind of review on everything that happened in the previous meetings, and then a vote on the personnel policy, and then a vote and discussion on the goals that will trickle down from the boards to myself, to department heads, to their staff, and then to the committees and commissions that reports to the boards. So I know that's a lot of stuff to put into April and May with everything we have going on. But I feel it's important to kind of get this conversation going and also completed so the personnel policy could go in effect July 1. And also department heads, committees can then realign their work for July 1 for the goals that the board set out for them. So we can be flexible. I know my email is very optimistic of having 4 meetings once every week. But I think as long as if we maybe plan at least the first one, that probably will get the ball rolling, and I can confirm with actually, instead of backing up, I think that both chairs and myself can kind of get a tentative schedule. But I want to see if the select board has any comments on how this is laid out. If you'd like to see any changes or anything included or taken away, or overall feedback on it.
Well, I wouldn't mind getting 1 or 2 of the joint meetings same night as either trustees or select board meeting.
Okay.
And just make whatever board has that meeting a lighter agenda in case it runs late.
Okay.
Were you envisioning some of these being during the day though, so that employees didn't have to?
Yeah, it works both ways. You know, employees don't have to come late at night, but then it may be hard to get representatives of the committees and commissions come during the day if they have full-time jobs. So I think either way, it's gonna be in a perfect system. But also, I think there are some departments that the goals could be rather straightforward and may not necessitate a 5-hour meeting. You know, fire and police are pretty straightforward. We may want to push in that direction, but you know, end of the day, if there's a fire going on, the fire department has to go put it out. So I think some of those could even be a memo from the department heads if they don't feel necessary to be, you know, in front of the boards.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions on that? Okay. Bond Street.
So based on, you can do the podium too if you want. There's a microphone at the podium.
Oh,
It depends on
it's
what you.
easier.
yeah.
It's probably easier to sit down.
So based on the guidance from the board, myself, Chief Green, Mark Hunter, went out to the sites last week. C and Bauer couldn't join us, but we talked to them afterwards. No one had any issues with the way the plans were currently designed. I have reached out to the bank on the corner there to let them know this potentially could be happening. At the time, they had no current feedback. But there was no real issue, I think, with Public Works or Fire with any changes that are being requested currently. They had other recommendations that we can get into if the board wants to, but in essence, they were okay with the plans.
What were their other?
Yeah. One recommendation was to turn Bond Street into a one-way to minimize some of the traffic and issues. Another idea was to just extend the sidewalk across Bond Street and turn Bond Street into a private road. And then other repairs and maintenance would go onto the landowners. So just two ideas that people were talking about as we kind of talked about it. But those might be larger conversations besides what the plans are.
I'm not in favor of Bond Street being one way.
I'm not in favor of giving it up to a private road.
Those, no. But there's no problem with two-way traffic.
No, they were out there and they don't think it'll be a concern.
How wide's the road gonna be? Rod and a half?
I think it was 1.25 rods.
Around a quarter.
And that makes it wider than it is now, or?
Makes it,
So, and you are,
I'm Andrew Garthwaite. I'm the architect working with the Duckworths. Clay, maybe.
they're on, yeah.
Yes,
We're on.
good morning, you all.
Oh, and Molly, there they are.
so it's gonna be a 20-foot walk, 20-foot road.
I'm not sure.
It's actually, sir, it's 20 foot, 7.5 inches, of which 16.5 feet is going to be the driving surface between the curbs.
Is that the same as it is now? It is essentially the same. There is a plan that shows it's sort of regularizing what's there, basically. It's pretty much what's there. What's there right now, actually, the pavement is over time, it's sort of the pavement has grown and there's been a sort of a white stripe that's marked the sidewalk, and this is proposing to put a curb sort of close to that line and create actual sidewalk. You know, people park there. I guess they're not supposed to, but people do park there and obstruct that. It's because the pavement is actually level. The only sidewalk is marked by this white line.
I don't know how well y'all can see what I'm sharing on the screen, but this is what we proposed a month ago. And you can kind of see, if I zoom in, you can see the existing road is in gray, and then the red shows the new stone curbs that we're proposing. So you can see that the overall width is very comparable to what we currently have. It does shift a little bit towards number 3 bond. But the width itself is quite comparable. And of course, you have a portion where you have a walking area. So you can see here in this other, these are existing conditions. You can see 16 foot, 15.9. So this is between the white stripe, which is indicated as the pedestrian area. We're proposing a 16.5 width. So 16.5 is about the same as what most of the road is. It does flare out a little bit wider in this portion. But generally speaking, it's about as wide as most of the road is. So we're proposing 1 rod for the width, which is fairly consistent, and then the addition of the sidewalk and then the stone curbs. And we can fit all of that within the 1 1/4 rod. But you can see here, even with the bank, it really, I want to pay particular attention to the bank's property, since that's not property that we own. And you can see that the curb just really generally aligns with what's there now with edge of asphalt.
You can see the edge sort of wobbling around a little bit.
Yeah, and then the other end of the road is actually, we're losing,
Yeah.
we're losing here then.
You're losing on
Well-
one side and gaining on the other.
A little bit on the
Yeah.
other, yeah. Overall, we're losing more than we're gaining, but look,
Yeah, and what happens for large trucks,
Well,
on the road? Now there's areas to pull over.
so what I would say is, in terms of large trucks, what they're doing now is kind of, they have the ability to kind of drive up on the pedestrian area, which is not ideal. So in some ways, the curbs would make it where people are not pulling off in the mud and off the side of the asphalt. They're not, running over pedestrians and pulling up on those areas. So it really clearly defines the driving surface. But again, I think it aligns with, generally speaking, with what is there now. So 16.5, whereas, these are lesser dimensions. Here, yes, it is a little bit more down here, but really what our challenge was is it's, that the 2 homes are so close together, and just making it, going to the 1 1/2 rods puts the edge of the curb way up here, so close to number 3 Bond. And it's something that we're hoping to avoid. So I think that it's, generally speaking, just with the addition of the sidewalk, the curbs, more safe for pedestrians, the idea that we had put crosswalks to align with the sidewalk on Pleasant Street and Central Street, I just think it's a big improvement. But absolutely open to y'all's feedback, and if y'all have any additional thoughts. I think, like Eric said, I think he met with Mark Hunter and David Green, and they were generally supportive of the plan. And I think that was kind of the takeaway from our last meeting, is to get everyone's input.
I don't like giving up any road. Even though it's a more on one end, you're taking away from the other, where somebody can kind of give and take. If they meet someone, they can wait for someone to come across. That's my opinion.
Well, and again, on this, if we take this end as an example, I think, like Andrew is trying to articulate, I don't think it is a slight shift, and part of that is, but it's not really a giving up. If we look at this end in particular, the area that I guess would be given up here on this side, on the west side of the street, would be between the red line and the gray line. But then the area of the road that would be added on the east side of the street is also between the red line and the gray line. You can see that the surface area of the two are pretty comparable. If anything, maybe we're adding a little bit more road because this is what's being added on this side. So I don't necessarily think that we're giving up there. And we're absolutely open if y'all feel like we need to tweak this, these radii, the radius dimension, to make it, what the surveyor did is he just showed what he thought was most representative of what's there in terms of the curves. These radii could be made larger, but I don't know how beneficial that would be or how necessary that is.
Right, I'm talking the other end of the street.
Other end of the street, it does. Yeah, and that's another conversation. On this end of the street, we were totally open, and I asked the surveyor this: would it be unusual to make the road wider in one stretch of the road and narrower in another stretch? Because because, you know, over here, we're less sensitive because it's not between the two structures. The structures can't be relocated. You know, and this is yard but he said it would be highly, highly unusual to have the road exist as one width and then kind of funnel or neck down to a narrower width. And
But it does now.
what's that?
But it does now.
That's what it does now, I know.
Yep.
But he said in terms of getting kind of a proper survey and getting it in the meeting minutes and kind of recording this for the future, and plus just kind of good building practice when you're setting your curbs and doing everything else, that it would be, you know, he said it would be unusual. And we're not necessarily opposed to that. He just said it would be unusual. And I think what we're struggling with is, again, this dotted line goes to 1.5 rods. And it just, and I feel like it's really not, this survey doesn't represent just how close the road would be to the front facade of this structure. It's literally when you walk off the steps off your porch and there's the road. It's just so close. And that's what we were trying to avoid. We kind of worked with this a fair amount and tried to massage it to get it where we thought it would be appropriate for, you know, for the village and for these two properties and future owners and pedestrians on the sidewalk. We thought it was a pretty good compromise.
Yep.
And
Ports that you're adding on.
On number 4, yes, that's
On the other side.
right. There are old photographs that show
Yeah,
the
I've seen
porch
them.
there, yeah.
I will add, Mark Hunter also was talking about maybe adding a crosswalk from that sidewalk across Pleasant Street as well to kind of help stem some of the traffic and making it easier walk from Bond Street with the new sidewalk all the way across.
And they were all fine with losing road with the road on one end.
They didn't give me any objections at the time.
I'm still concerned about trucks in a car. I would rather see the sidewalk that's up on the Central Street side pushed over more, so if they met, they have someplace to pass each other.
Well,
I agree.
Yeah, I guess, you know, it kind of goes back to, in my opinion, just, you know, what we want. Well, I guess, first of all, like, you know, a trailer, for example, is usually, you know, I think 7'6" wide. The widest of commercial trailers are 8 foot wide. So even if you do have a truck that's, you know, a truck doesn't exceed 8 foot in width. And if you have a truck and a small car, we do have 16.5 feet of driving surface. So if a small car is maybe 6.5 feet and the truck is 8 feet, you know, I do think it's doable. You know, you need special kind of wide permits to go wider than 8 foot for any kind of, so it would be unusual to have trucks wider than 8 feet, not counting mirrors and things of that nature.
Trailers are 8'6".
And obviously you haven't seen a tourist drive up there yet.
Cater our roads to the tourists.
And I had one thing, and I don't know if he'll want to hop on, but we actually have engineers on this meeting for a different department, and they just emailed me a question. So John, are you on? John from Hill Tanner, are you there?
Coming in, there we
Yeah,
go.
could you guys just ask the question with drainage? You emailed me.
Yeah, I was just pointing out, you know, so when you curb both sides of the street, that will force the drainage onto the street. I assume it sheets off right now. So there would need to be a collection system. And I'm not sure what that would tie into within the network. And it could bring into some new stormwater half-acre permitting requirements. It's not unmanageable. I was just pointing it out to Eric on the side that would be something to think about. And you may want to consider widening it. It's 16 feet curb to curb. So yes, when you have just pavement and the truck can let its wheel go right to the edge, it's different than when trying to get to the face of the curb is pretty tight at 16 feet for passing vehicles.
Right. So John, we do have the surveyor is a civil engineer. I got a gentleman named Brad Rudderman. And then we have DeWolf Engineering, Chris Temple, who's a civil engineer. And what we talked about is rather than like any kind of gutter system, kind of as we regrade Bond Street, trying to, you know, right now it currently does have a high point, but there are low spots, but really trying to be mindful. We set those curbs and try and have fall both towards Central and Pleasant. where you don't have any ponding of water, but I don't know that it'd necessarily be necessary to add any kind of gutter or piping or drainage per se, but just really trying to improve the slope of the existing street. And it is 16'6" is what we're proposing, so a little bit wider than 16.
Yeah, and I, I was pointing out, it is conceptual what you have right now. It's in general, like from a complete streets, from a multi-user of within a right of way, the idea of getting protected sidewalks where vehicles are currently traveling into the pedestrian areas, it's a good concept. It is something of a goal of engineers in the state of Vermont with complete streets. Just bringing up that through the preliminary design, and that's a good engineering firm to work through, through those challenges, and it can evolve a bit from the concept to what you need in the final presentation.
Right, absolutely.
Thanks, John.
Wendy and Jill.
I guess the last thing I might say. Oh, I'm sorry.
Wendy, who had the hand up first?
Thank you. Thank you. I want to applaud the new property owner's commitment to pedestrian life, to upgrading a historical site. I'm speaking as a village resident. I'm also speaking as a member of the Village Historic Preservation Commission, where things that nod to how Woodstock has evolved are positives. I would suggest we rank and prioritize what we value most in this. Really, trucks being, for that cut through, I would think rated lower need than the benefits of the pedestrian and really truly historic aesthetic experience. That's added value you can't measure. The trucks I'm thinking of, a fire truck, an ambulance, the most important would find their way. As far as Casella, they can pick up off of Pleasant. I'm just not sure what trucks we're prioritizing for in this dialogue if we weigh it in the whole scheme of the benefits the village stands to experience as a pedestrian, as a visitor. So I just wanted to weigh in on that level. Thank you.
Okay. Jill?
So Wendy said most of what I was going to say. This is a walking village. Bond Street is not a road for trucks except the emergency ones. There's a very simple way to do this, which is put a sign that says no trucks. And make this a road that we use every day to walk into the village, to go home, and just let's build the village for walkers.
Any comments?
I'm supportive of this plan. I think, having more sidewalk is beneficial to us. And so I thank the Duckworth for proposing this. I think this is, like Harry said, a vast improvement over what we currently have. And if our emergency services can get through, then yeah. I do understand the concern for other traffic, but I do think the question needs to be posed. My planning commission hat on, what we do want to plan for. And I would like to plan for more safer pedestrians.
So I think there's two things to consider here. One is the board approving this plan as presented with the assumption that have to go through planning and zoning and all that stuff. So that's one decision. The other one is probably a long-term decision. Who's going to pay for this work? And those can be two separate conversations, two separate votes. But I think just be clear that this is going to be expensive. And so who's going to be paying for that should also be a conversation that happens either, if not now, in the near future.
So has there been any thought as to runoff, where that goes? Now it kind of drifts off, but when you channel it on each side with a curb.
Right, I would say at least half the street, the buildings are the grade rises up, so it doesn't wash off. And even the southern end, I'm not quite as familiar with, but I don't think there's that much that's running off the street right now. And, you know, it just sort of shedding off to.
Right, but it's gonna go somewhere. I mean,
Right,
I
so
would,
right now it's.
I would entertain a motion that we approve this pending a drainage
Plan.
plan,
Stormwater. plan.
stormwater plan.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
If I-
Opposed.
The last comment I was gonna make is I think what we're trying to do is get the width of the road approved. I think that, and I might be mistaken in terms of just, in terms of process, but I think we're trying to get the width of the road approved, and then I think there's numerous additional approvals beyond that.
You're correct, yes.
So I don't know if the environment, or if the drainage and kind of the engineering and technical details would come as part of a different board. But I think the width is kind of the question before this board, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, you're correct. And there'll also be a lot of permits you'll have to get, and some of those conversations will happen in the permanent process. What's going to happen, the drainage will be one of them when you do a sidewalk permit, excavation, parking lot permit, et cetera, et cetera. So those all should come up in that process as well.
But just to be clear, we want to understand the drainage, the environmental before we kind of approve the width. Is that right?
We
No,
have
they-
approved the width.
Yeah, we approve the width with
Conditional.
conditional, making sure the drainage is gonna work by shedding it to both Central and Pleasant Street.
Okay, and would y'all like for one of our consultants to examine that and get back to you all?
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah.
Okay, all right,
And
thank
then
you.
that can just be a conversation between them and Mark Hunter, our Public Works Director.
As long as he's happy with it.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
thank you.
Thank you
very
all.
much.
So we want to move on to the agenda policy quickly, and then we do the other additions and deletions. So we can do the agenda policy and then local options, sewer and
We also
short-term
have
rentals.
two others sitting here.
Yeah, that we had them last, so they could also stay for the conversation about the wastewater plants. So agenda policy is just a reminder. The board and the trustees voted on this back in the winter to kind of follow a new process, a codify the process we've kind of been following for agendas and how it's going to be laid out. This is a way we're hoping to be as communicative as possible to the board members, but also to have some kind of guidelines in place so the public knows how to get an agenda, what's needed. Because it's always voted on, it's not a vote, it's discussion, but I talked to the trustees and I will stress this to the board as well. Nikki and myself will be the bad guys, telling people, that they not following the process, they can't be on the agenda. And we just ask that the board supports that. So if someone comes to you afterwards and says, Eric's being mean, I want to put this on the agenda, you can say, no, the board voted on this process. They're just following the process that we put in place. And so I'll just ask that. Nikki will have this. We'll put it on the listserv, Facebook, our website, and we're also going to put it on where you go on a website to get permits. There'll be a link to have the agenda process there as well, so people can also see on the websites. So it should be hopefully as well known as possible.
Is Joe here for the police chief report?
Yes.
Nothing else to do.
Yeah, Joe, Chief, you want to come up and, again, we kind of fell off this, but when Chief Swanson was going through the process interviewing for the police chief's job, one of his ideas in front of the select board to give an update, but also to get feedback from the board as well to kind of make it as transparent as possible, the relationship we have with the village police department. So, thanks, Chief.
Morning, everyone. So starting off with the personnel, can't think of what the date was I was here last, so I think it was a while ago. So since then I've had hired a sergeant, and that's Chris O'Keefe, and he comes to us from Vermont DMV, and before that Hartford Police Department. So he's got 15 or 16 years of law enforcement with a good background that lends itself to Woodstock well. Corporal Murphy's coming back next week from her maternity leave. So she's excited to have some more interaction with, other than the four walls of her living room. Officer Turco has started her level 3 training, which is 16 weeks long and will at the end qualify her to investigate more crimes. And she's doing well. She's enjoying it. And then Officer Aurora has started his training in September. And at the beginning of March, he finishes his training. So he's now out on his own. We have been pretty busy, and just in the first quarter of the year, we've made 13 arrests. We had one scare at the school that took about a day of investigating and joining in with other resources with mental health and to make sure that everything was safe at the school to reopen later in the week. We started tracking directed patrols. I don't have the numbers on me, but looking at the trending, December was like a partial month. It was people getting used to it. January started out strong, and then kind of tapered off a little bit in what we're recording, not in what we're doing. And then January was pretty consistent. And it's a good way to look at trends and where we're patrolling it more than every road that we're driving on. If we started doing that, it would just be a flood of meaningless road names.
And if I could just interject here, this conversation came up as the chairs of both boards are talking about a new contract for the police department. And the contract that got approved last month lays out this kind of tracking of police patrols in the town. So they started doing it in December to kind of get the officers used to it. It's not currently an obligation, but they're doing it now to kind of track, see how it goes over the course of the year. But once July hits, it'll be an obligation for them to kind of track where they are. Because as we know, if you're visible in the village, it's usually pretty easy because you're probably somewhere in the village where everyone is. When you're on a dirt road or someone in the town, you could be there, but no one's going to see you because 5 people live there or no one's driving by. So it's a way to make sure that the town has the coverage that they're paying for. Sorry, Chief.
Thank you. I've got the new graphics on the Town Explorer. Some of the blue lights on that car have burned out, I think, just from water exposure. So I've purchased some new ones and I'll be getting those installed at some point in the next month or whenever I get that scheduled. And I have at about the end of the year, I think 7 officers now total are certified in tasers, which I think is a great additional non-lethal force option that can be used in tense situations. That's kind of all I prepared for this morning. I don't know what questions everyone has for me, but happy to field anything.
I would be remiss if I didn't say that the residents of South Woodstock Village are still upset with speeding going on through the village.
Okay.
I had a question, Joe, just because I'm not super familiar with all the staff on the police force, but I was wondering how many officers or how many staff members live in Woodstock versus like the surrounding areas, like how long people are commuting.
There's 2 of us that live in town.
Mm-hmm.
And then other commutes range from 20 to 35 minutes.
If I could just hop in on that, this is something we're going to be talking about in those meetings. It's one thing for me to have to drive 30 minutes, but when you're talking about public safety, 30 minutes can be the difference between life and death. So for EMTs, fire, police, and it just kind of goes to the issue we're having with what we're paying people compared to the cost of living in Woodstock and around Woodstock, and how that can be detrimental to the services we do provide. So Phil, I'll put a plug in for that because you'll hear that more often as we go forward. I know it's not a simple solution, but it's something we need to be aware of going forward of how this is going to have an impact on us.
Do you have officers looking to relocate to Woodstock?
I have one officer that, will be looking in June
Okay.
or so. I will add, I did bring in, Officer Donka, who is one of our part-time officers, to do a specific day in Southwest. I think about 4 hours or so directly and, focused in South Woodstock. That was last week.
Last thing I want to thank Chief Swanson and the Sheriff's Office. We had a scare last week in Route 4. And they both responded very quickly to solve the issue as quickly as possible. So I just want to thank them publicly for how quickly they all responded and the work they did. Thank you.
Have a nice day, everyone.
Thanks, Joe.
So next, if we don't mind, I'd like to go to our short-term rental updates. So Laura Powell, who is select board member, newly reelected, is also the ex officio for the Planning Commission. As we talked before, state statute gives the select board the ability to have, or recommends, or requires that a board member be an ex officio for the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission traditionally is a commission that provides legislative advice to the board. So having someone on the board who are in those meetings, understand it, can then report back to the board is very important. So with everything we have going on, I thought it'd be nice to have a pause for a second and let Laura kind of inform the board and the public what is on tap.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm sure you guys have started to see some of the conversation, so I'll just give an overview of what is happening and what has happened. The Planning Commission is having their public hearing on Monday to hear final public comment about the process that they've been working on for a year to review our current short-term rental ordinances. Currently, we have a separate ordinance for the town and separate ordinance for the village. And then we are going to have an informational meeting with both boards next Wednesday, the 27th, which will be to give everybody an overview of what's gone into that process, what the proposed regulations are going to be, and then in preparation for a vote in April with both boards as well. So I certainly don't expect you guys to have all the information because that will be coming on Wednesday, but if you have questions leading up to, or if you've heard from residents with questions, I'm happy to sit down with you. I know Stephen's happy to sit down with you. This process has taken, I would say, at least hundreds of hours on the part of the Planning Commission. And they've heard from all sorts of groups within the community and from the state level, including but not limiting to housing advocates, people who've been displaced by short-term rentals, people who advocate for short-term rentals at the state level, short-term rental operators, property management companies, and community members from both the town and the village. So I would just say, yeah, it's going to be comprehensive. It's going to be very dense, but we're going to try and make it as simple as possible so that everyone's on the same page in terms of understanding what's in front of them.
And when will this go public?
Which part?
The ordinance, the new ordinances, the proposed ordinance.
The proposed ordinances will be public at the public hearing on Monday. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, so they'll go
Right.
Tuesday, they'll be available for, they'll either on listserv or online or something.
Yeah. Do you want to speak to this, Stephen?
Look, I didn't expect to be here this morning. Stephen Bauer, Director of Planning. They're live already, Ray. They are online. They live online.
Okay.
As the Planning Commission will be presenting them for public hearing on Monday. As they change, we'll try and get those updated as fast as we can as they change through the process.
I'd like to see it on listserv on
Yeah.
Tuesday, please.
Yeah, we can put that. We can put that link up there.
The date in here.
Yeah.
I'd rather have them come with questions than,
So you want it before Tuesday? You want it before Monday?
no, I want it before the meeting.
The meeting.
Wednesday. Our meeting's Wednesday.
Yeah, our meeting.
So if they're having a final meeting Monday night. So if they get out Tuesday morning.
Yep.
On Monday night, so it's on listserv for Tuesday morning.
So what our plan would be is to have a link to the specific language of the entire ordinance. I mean, it's about 16 pages, double spaced. And so that's a legal document. So I don't want to just have that and just copy and paste that on the listserv. What we plan to have is a summary of what is there, as well as an FAQ, frequently asked questions. So if people don't have time to read the entire ordinance, otherwise, if people have time, we'll have the link there. You can see the full language if you want to dive fully in, but we'll have a summary and the
As long as there's something
FAQ.
on a listserv that people can go to. That's all. I
Gotcha.
care.
All right, we'll send that out.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We did the sign.
Are there any other questions on the short-term rental updates? No. Laura, do you want to hop into the 1% then?
Sorry, I'll just say, so I wanted to follow up to the local options tax, which passed obviously on town meeting day. And we followed up with the Department of Taxes to confirm that, that we want this to be in effect starting on July 1st. So what's going to happen next is that the Department of Taxes is going to send notices to all residents and businesses in Woodstock and the surrounding communities, as well as e-commerce retailers. Those should go out mid-May, so like 45 days notice. And then the Department of Taxes will update their online map, which is called their like tax locator. And then after that, we will start collecting, or the tax will start being remitted to us after the first quarterly filing, which would be September 30th. So we can expect to see funds come the first week of November of this year.
Thank you.
Questions?
Last thing we have before we get to Harry and then the wastewater plant. We talked in the past about having some kind of guidelines for sewer abatements. So Susan Ford took some time, kind of put something together that was emailed to you, I believe, last week. We looked at it internally. We do have a comment on number 4 that we can get into. But I think that the goal was, if we have this as a guideline, then when people come to Corey or Nikki or myself, we can say it does not fit into one of these regulations. You're not going to get approved. You're still welcome to go to the select board, but odds are some are not going to be approved. But then if someone does come from the board has guidelines to fall back on, instead of kind of being at the will of the board at the time. So I think it's important to start the discussion now and hopefully have something ready for June. So I'll dive right in. The one issue we had with number 4 is we really don't have a process internally to track like those 3 years when it will go back. We could probably have an Excel sheet that would require some more work hours. But that's something we just kind of caught right off the bat as we talked about internally. So I'll just flag that as we go forward, and maybe we can try to find a different solution to that, or come up with a way we can do it over the next month or so.
And I don't think this was available online, so maybe we could just review what number 4 is, since people on Zoom don't know what we're talking about.
Oh, yeah. And I wonder if I can share my screen quickly.
The concern was the people that come to us and say, there's like, we had one today, we're not a family home anymore, we're only a 2-person home. They're not on water, so we can't measure, or they're not metered at least. And so we have no way of knowing when that home goes back to being a 3 or 4-person home, and they should be contributing more toward the sewer. So what I had drafted was to say that in 3 years, it automatically reverts back to its prior use unless they come in and ask us again. Just to try to catch some of that.
But, and Eric's saying that there's no way
Right.
currently for us in this to track those abatements.
Yeah.
I wonder if this is somewhere that $20,000 ARPA funds could help our,
Yeah.
maybe Corey has an idea.
It could be.
Could be.
And I think, this is a different conversation, but I know since I've been here, we've talked about revisiting how we do non-metered sewer rates.
Say, this is why I think it should be based on number of bedrooms.
And so that's another conversation we probably have to have in conjunction with this, is how we want to do that. I think what my recommendation would be to find a way to encourage people to install a meter. So what we could do to kind of have the flat rate at a certain amount to encourage installing a meter, so they have a more accurate cost structure. There'll be less work for us, less work for them, and more accurate understanding how much they use.
But if you're not on the aqueduct,
I think you can put it.
I don't know why you wouldn't be able to.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know how expensive it is, but
it's gonna save you.
it's gonna save you money. Yeah. It's an accurate way of keeping track of it, unless you go back to the bedrooms.
And this is what the original guidelines we have right now are. So if the board wants to kind of look this over, and maybe it can be on the agenda for next month, and we can make some changes or additions if we want.
Yeah, I think I'm willing to wait till next month.
I mean, I think we should have a discussion about it a few times and go over some issues.
I think that's everything except for a note.
Yep.
For the
So,
Harry.
all right.
Went up.
I want to thank him for sitting through the last hour and 15 minutes. We originally had him up top to kind of let him come and go, but then when we had Oil Tanner, we wanted Harry to be available to ask any questions when it relates to energy and how the town can work with Oil Tanner going forward. So that's why we asked him to wait till the end. So appreciate it.
Great.
Floor is yours.
Thank you. Yeah, so first of all, I'll say thank you to Mr. Chairman and Eric and for the rest of the select board for having me here this morning. And I gotta say, I've been to like 18 or 20 different select boards in the region now. This is the first one I've been to with a podium, so I feel like I've really hit the big time here. So yeah, as Eric said, my name is Harry Falconer. I'm the new energy coordinator from the Two Rivers Ottaquechee Regional Commission. I work for Woodstock and the 5 other towns that participate in the IREC program, the Intermunicipal Regional Energy Coordinator Program. I just took over in late January, so still pretty new to it. But it was a very smooth transition between me and the previous energy coordinator, Jeff Kraut, because I already worked at Two Rivers as a sort of general purpose planner for the last year, with some experience in energy projects. So it's been a pretty smooth transition. I was able to work with Jeff alongside Jeff for the last 2 weeks or so, and have joint meetings with him and Eric and some of the other town managers in the program to really ensure continuity between us. So yeah, the main reason of me being here this morning is just to introduce myself and get some FaceTime with you, but also to briefly talk about what has been done so far under my very short tenure, and talk about what your priorities are going forward for me and for energy projects that you're interested in town. So just very briefly, without monopolizing too much time before we speak to the folks at Oil Tanner about the wastewater project. The big thing that has happened since I started is that the school district has taken delivery of 3 electric school buses from the EPA Clean School Bus program, which was a $1.1 million grant that was won by Jeff Martin, who was the previous energy coordinator a few years ago. So that has finally come to fruition after numerous delays. So you may have seen Ginevra's piece in the Standard about it, but yeah, the school district has those 3 buses on site now. And as of a couple of weeks ago, when we got a sort of meet and greet with the buses and the vendor from the manufacturer, they are still waiting on getting their charging infrastructure installed, but everything else is being finalized. So a long process there, but that has finally come to fruition. So the other thing that we are looking at very soon is the Municipal Energy Resilience Program energy audit of this building, Town Hall, which is coming up next month. We still have some back and forth between myself and Eric and the contractor there to finalize a date and time for that, just to make sure that we're out of folks' hair here and we're not interrupting any public access needs and things like that. So that's coming up soon. For a building of this size, they estimate that the energy audit is worth about $20,000, and that is being provided for free through this program. Other smaller things, the EEI energy upgrades for your various town buildings, that project was already in process when I took over, and I understand there's been some rockiness with communication to the town from EEI. So I have been trying to take some of the coordination for vendor or for contractor access off of Eric's place. So mainly with the coordinating with the Chamber of Commerce to get into the Welcome Center when they need to. So hopefully that has been going a little bit smoother, at least for the Welcome Center, but you know, some minor communication snafus have continued with them. So really just trying to be in the contractor's ear there and help make sure that we minimize you know, conflicts going forward. And then lastly, again, in my very short tenure so far, we've started working with local businesses a little bit. So we're looking for sites in town for the state's EVSE program, the Electric Vehicle Supply Equipment Program, which is a big new grant program that can help fund EV fast chargers at various, they refer to them as public attractions, basically businesses and places that generate traffic like that. And so we were looking to solicit sites and had some meetings, and we ended up applying for that grant for Leah Werner, who is the owner of the Woodstock side of the Bridgewater Mills. 10,000 to 15,000 cars a day pass by that location on their way to Killington, and obviously, you know, having an EV charger is a good amenity for local businesses to use to, you know, generate additional traffic and support their businesses and ultimately support tourism to Woodstock. So we'll find out if we're invited to submit a full application for that by April 1st, so a couple weeks now. That grant amount is for up to $160,000 for that equipment. Looking to the future, so big initiatives going forward. The main thing on my plate really is that Jill and the other folks from Sustainable Woodstock have brought me into the planning effort for the wastewater treatment plant. So we organized a meeting with Hoyle Tanner and Efficiency Vermont's commercial and industrial team to make sure that we keep them engaged throughout the design process to really look to maximize energy saving technology that is implemented in the plant. Obviously, it's a massive capital project. We want to make sure that the resulting plant is as energy efficient as possible and try to save on operations costs going forward, even though we are going to have to, town is going to have to pour a substantial amount of money into the capital project. So we're looking at various solutions with Consumer Vermont, and Hoyle Tanner has been very receptive to working with them for reducing the plant's energy use and thus reducing operations costs going forward. So really just my role is keeping Efficiency Vermont engaged throughout the design process and making sure that they're pursuing all of the various technologies that they can be to make sure that we get the best result. And without going into the weeds too much on that, I'm sure some more engineering talk will be happening in the rest of this meeting. But and yeah, so for the rest of my piece, I would just ask you all on the select board what your other priorities are going forward for myself and for the program. If there are other energy efforts in town that you are interested in having me focus on. And yeah, my only other question would be how you would like to hear from me in future, whether you would like to have me check in on some kind of regular basis in person at these meetings. My normal reporting system to the steering committee is to provide written quarterly reports, which can, of course, and will be passed on to Nikki to be included in your packets and such going forward. But if you want more in-person check-ins for me, I'm, of course, very open to that. I work at the King Farm just up the road, so no hassle for me whatsoever. But yeah, so your priority projects and how you would like to hear from me in the future.
So before the board, I just want to say one thing. When we talked about in the past energy coordinator, one of the things I mentioned was I want someone that was proactive, not reactive. And since Harry's come on board, he's been very proactive, which is what, as we talked about a lot, there's not a lot of free time on our end to do things, to have those conversations, to have someone who's coming to me with ideas or solutions has been very helpful, because takes away that part of me spending time trying to find something and reaching out to him. So I just want to thank him for being so proactive, not only with EEI, but with a few other things we've been working on as well. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Harry,
Thanks.
thanks for being here. I'll just say all those projects you're working on sound exciting, especially the EV chargers at the Woodstock side of the Bridgewater Mill. I think that's like a huge plus for us. I wonder if it makes sense to have Harry back after we do our goals, that maybe we have kind of more direction for him.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Although I'm encouraged by all the proactive stuff he's done already.
And if I could, I think we could invite him for that conversation. He would give the goals he thinks that he should be
Yeah.
pursuing, and the board can then come back and agree, disagree. So that might be a better way to phrase it. So we totally treat him as an employee. So if we want to treat him as a department head for energy, he can come back and, so I don't know if you were here earlier, the boards are going to have kind of all the department heads, committees come in front of them with their goals for the next fiscal year. And then discuss them and then kind of go back to the department heads with the select board's goals for department heads.
Okay.
So if you want to participate in that process, so kind of again, be proactive and tell us what you think we should be looking at, and the board can see how that fits into the grand plan.
Okay, absolutely. Anything else?
That'd be great, thank you.
Thank you all. Yeah.
All right, John and Kristen, are you guys there?
We're here.
All right, so the floor is yours.
Oh. I thought we were here to answer questions, but would you like us to give, maybe the select board has something they wants to start off with giving a background?
Can you kind of give a background on how the project has come along from the start, and then what the final design would look like from your view? And if you also wouldn't mind giving kind of the background of South Woodstock that we talked about as well. I think all those three things would be very helpful.
Kirsten, do you want to take a lead in going through the premise of design? Do you want me to pull up the PowerPoint presentation? Just
Yeah,
so-
why don't we do that?
Okay.
Why don't we run through the PowerPoint again?
And
So-
quickly, before we start, I do want to, Kirsten, you and I said we weren't really going to get into this because we just got notification that the congressionally directed spending has been announced, and there could be some opportunities. It's really focused around energy. So hearing Harry talk, and Harry, we should probably talk afterwards with Jill and Eric, but there could be some features that have been discussed in our previous meeting that may be of interest. So we were doing some exploratory calls with Senator Welch having ties to your area. We thought that was a good fit to reach out to. So while we're just kind of like exploring for a number of clients, but that came to mind particularly in terms of energy. So we'll come back to that afterwards, but sorry, I know we didn't say we weren't going to get into that, but it is something to keep on.
That's it's exciting news, so thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, some real strong dollar amounts that we could have potential for. All right, let me share over. I'll have the ability to share, right?
Yeah, there's a green button.
Yeah, just
All right. So just as a, I think let's go to just the timeline. Let's do a quick, go one slide up. Yeah. Just as a quick, the timeline, your original facility was in 1968. The Army Corps of Engineers built the berm around the treatment plant in 73. There's been upgrades throughout the years, but the majority of the plant is over, it was built in 1982. As I said, there has been a few additions and upgrades over the years, but the majority of the plant is showing its age, and there is a need, and the equipment is at the end of its useful life. So there is a need to upgrade equipment so that you have a properly operating plant that will meet your discharge effluent limits, so you do not violate them with your effluent out to the Ottauquechee River. And just as a backup, Hoyle Tanner was retained by the town to do a preliminary engineering report, which is a assessment of all the existing conditions. We look at every piece of equipment on the site. We give it a expected life rating and a criticality rating to determine, what needs to be upgraded to bring you through the next 20 years. We look at a 20-year horizon for planning. And the results of that report have been shared with the select board. And it's basically, we have aging infrastructure. There's a need for flood resiliency. There is a need to upgrade for future permit limits. The plant, the plant has a nitrogen limit and will have a total phosphorus limit coming in the near future. And to account for growth throughout your sewer shed. One of the things we we determined, we evaluated, is that the plant is seeing a lot higher peak flows during rain events, and it's not rated for those peak flows. So there's the potential to overwhelm the system and not to have adequate treatment to meet your permit limitations or to disinfect prior to discharge to the Ottauquechee River. So our proposed site plan, as you can see, is to build a new headworks building right there, upgrade the intermediate pumps for that peak hydraulic flow. As you can see, the arrows coming through, build new aeration tanks with anoxic zones ahead of it. That helps with our biological treatment process. Rehab the existing secondary clarifiers. We would then demolish the existing aeration tank, which you can see hatched out. That's the large circle hatched out. We would demolish the existing chlorine contact tank and move to a new UV disinfection system housed in a building. We would leave room once the existing aeration tank is demolished to have an addition put on to the UV building. Sorry, just if in the event you had a more stringent total phosphorus limit. I have had conversations with the state of Vermont. It is expected that your limit will be around the 0.8 milligram per liter, which is easily achievable with just chemical addition. If in the future that becomes more stringent, we would leave space so that you could do an upgrade at some point in the future for some kind of tertiary equipment like a filtration process. But that's not it's not necessary in the near future, nor is it part of this proposed upgrade. We'd also leave room once that tank the large aeration tank is demolished for future growth for a third secondary clarifier. Again, not part of this upgrade, but we're leaving space for those things. The large blue square at the top is an existing dewatering pump station, which is used to dewater the site in the event that the Ottauquechee River level is so high that it can't flow by gravity into it. It has been used on occasion, especially when there is an ice jam. It was used during Irene. It protects the plant from flooding. Those pumps are from the 70s, and there's only one. So there's a need there to upgrade that, provide a redundant pump, and just upgrade that facility right there. Other areas are to have some renovations to the existing operations building. The operators eat their lunch in their laboratory, which is not a sanitary condition, so that needs to be corrected. Energy efficiency upgrades, roof, windows, etc. I know some things have been happening all along, but we would look to build off of those. The big blue circles are the existing sludge holding tanks. We would be replacing the aeration equipment in those and providing more efficient blowers. The blowers for those are old and outdated and are not, and they're a big energy consumption. And that's it in a nutshell for the proposed site plan.
And so just so we're clear, based on conversation we had in the past, you think there's about capacity for 500 more connections?
Correct.
And then you're also leaving space if Woodstock develops, especially in that area, that we could go back and increase the capacity for sewer somewhere down the road.
John, do you want to pull the site plan up again?
Yes,
Do you still have that, or I actually?
it's coming up, just.
Okay. So one of the nice things about these aeration tanks and where we would put them is we can slide those up or down the page, if you will, and you can have you could have a third train in the event that some point in the future you increase your capacity at the plant. That is to increase your capacity requires you to have an amendment to your discharge permit with the state of Vermont. So it's not a simple exercise, but it is possible to get more capacity. But we would leave you space. We'd slide all that down and leave you space to have a third train for future growth.
Thank you.
Yep.
I could leave this up if everybody wants, or I could pull it back down.
And then can you talk about how you would how would the final design work? How would you work with the town as the process kind of comes from 90% to 100%?
Oh, I didn't mean to stop here. I was gonna show the schedule for that one. I have that up as well. Let me share back screen again, and I'll talk through how that works. So already, you know, we did, if you noticed in the scope of work that I sent over, that we did add in a feature for energy coordination. So with Jill and with Harry and yourself and the town working to identify and meet the goals that are somewhat, you know, they go with this plant. There's going to be a lot of energy upgrades inherently. What Kirsten was talking about, the more efficient blowers, the more efficient pumps, but then there's how do you heat the buildings? How do you collect energy on site? How do you, you know, a number of digital services, like digital services could be really an interesting, I think, something that might be of real interest to the town of Woodstock, where you can, that's where we're talking through flex load management and, you know, how you can offset the cost of electricity and gain benefits there. So we can get into more details on that, but that's something that we would do continuously in smaller groups. And then working through on bigger milestones. So the big first step right here is what we're pushing for to get going on is the public outreach process. And that has a number of, you know, a number of connection points with the town, where we would do public presentations on the project to help get the, you know, we did that one for the select board informally, just getting everybody up to speed on how the report ended. That was back in January. But we do maybe some more emphasized, maybe around the project to help get support for it. And let me see. So really getting into, oh, I don't have these all collapsed. But essentially, you know, what you do is right after, as we go into design, we would have a number, you know, the meetings of regularity would be with Tim and your staff to make sure the, you know, the operators are going to have a large amount of say through the basis of design and then through the conceptual design all the way through, you know. But as far as the key milestone points where there's going to be larger productions, it's 30%, 60%, and 90%. That's where those deliverables that get reviewed by the state happen. And that's a good point for the kind of that big step back, work with, you know, have the select board see what's happening. If you want to have input at that point, those are good kind of milestone points to keep in mind. Kirsten, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I do. One thing I really like to do is I like to engage the operators, the people who are using this facility on a day-by-day, you know, day-to-day basis. I mean, ultimately, I'm not running the plant for them. They're going to be running it. So it needs to really have a lot of operator input. And their buy-in on what equipment we're designing around, whether or not we're going to go for some kind of pre-procurement on a proprietary type of a piece of equipment. Here's an example. This doesn't apply to you guys, but a lot of times some of the bigger pieces of equipment, like the SBR system for South Woodstock, you know, you design around a particular manufacturer, because if you left that open to competitive bid, you'd have change orders during construction, because all the different SBRs are different, you know, they're all very slightly different. So that's just an example, but we would work with them. And then usually like around the 60%, well, between 30 and 60, we really like to sit down with the owners, the operators, and kind of go through the functional use of each space. Like we'll have design workshops with the process engineers, but also with the architects to say, how do you want to use this space? What is most important to you? We do that as well with mechanical engineers, so that we have the right kind of heating, cooling, whether or not we want to explore effluent heat, you know, exchange. That's a thing that Hoyle Tanner's designed down at Brattleboro wastewater treatment facility. Is working great for them. It's something we're looking at for our Bartlett Bay facility up here in South Burlington. So we start to talk about how the spaces are conditioned. We talk to the electrical and instrumentations engineers. We bring them in and we talk about how do you want this to be controlled. And I haven't talked with you all about digital services, but there's a new push to have, I'm gonna call it, like instrumentation and controls, and we call it digital services in the sense that you're taking real-time data from instrumentation that's in your tankage, say a dissolved oxygen sensor. And that here's a simple example, that dissolved oxygen sensor is reading real-time levels in the tanks, and it's fed into a feedback loop with the blowers to control the rate of air so that you're not over aerating. So you're not sending too much air and you're sending just the right amount of air. That's a simple loop, but there can be more complicated ones where you have a plant that sees a lot of II and you can go into a storm mode so that you are ahead of time kind of loading up your solids inventory in the aeration tanks so that you're not washing solids out of your secondary clarifiers during a wet weather event. And it uses predictive analytics. It uses AI, which could be a little scary, but it's actually acting as another operator. It is assisting your operators to weather these wet weather events or to optimize the plant for energy efficiency, for operational costs, energy costs, for chemical usage. And you can do a lot of optimization to achieve those things using these kind of digital services of what we call. So we like to have these workshops at that point in design to really engage and get buy-in with the people who are using the plant. Is that any questions?
Any questions from the board?
Jill has a question.
Well, I want to make sure the board has,
You know,
okay. Jill?
I was wondering what the logic was for doing public engagement so early before the vote.
I'm gonna let John talk to that.
Sure, yeah, it takes a long time for to allow people to both ask questions, and then we already have a pretty nicely compiled list of frequently asked questions. But there would be a website developed. There might be some site visits or plant tours potentially that we could record this summer. I was kind of thinking that maybe that would be something to go up on the website for people who can't, because you can't take everybody in the public to walk around and see the needs, but you're trying to get, a successful vote, a successful passing vote. And what we found, and we just recently had this in Milford, where we did a very similar project where we went through a proper process to educate the public on the project and allow them to ask questions and get feedback so that by the time they were going to vote, they really felt they had a good understanding, and it did pass. So that's why we like to give a good duration for that.
The only thing that comes to mind is that we are potentially going to have a vote on the water company acquisition too, and that might conflict with it. It could be helpful, could not be helpful.
There's some strategizing to do with regards to what you want to put on what ballot, and I think multiple projects do want to consider when the best time is, when the optimal time. November has been something that we targeted last fall when talking with Eric, that it's a presidential vote, so you're going to have a good voter turnout. So
I wasn't talking about the vote time. I was talking about there's potentially two streams of information coming to people about two different subjects, two different dates for votes. So that's the strategizing that needs to be done.
Are you saying you combine maybe the outreach with both projects? So like if there is a website created, are you saying like having a dual feature there, Jill, or no?
I was worried about overloading actually, and maybe thinking what one viewpoint could be, don't talk about the wastewater treatment plant till August.
That is really a discussion to be had with the town as to prioritization or to what strategies could be. I mean, both have needs, right? So it's I would say, we come from our perspective of the wastewater plant and see what needs to be done out there. So we're biased.
And yeah, I think if and when the town decides to go forward with Hoyle Tanner, that'll probably be the first conversation we had with the board and Hoyle Tanner, what we want to do.
Now, I will also say, like, the bond vote doesn't have, you can continue to advance design. So the way the CWSR program works is when you get the loan for design, you get 5 years before you have to start making your first payment. So it's a 0% loan on design phase services that eventually gets rolled into the construction. So let's say construction starts at year 4, you roll the design into that, and then you can begin paying back with that whole loan program. So it's, you could complete design. The requirement is you can't advance to step 3 for construction until you have an approved bond vote by the town. So that is another option for the town to consider strategy-wise as to when you put the bond vote out. And we have done bond votes more towards our final design portion of the project, but we've also done them before we even start design. So it's the only risk is if you push it later, the design has already gotten to a good point, and if there's anything that changes and you have to revert back on something or modify something in the design, it could expand up the design costs or the schedule.
Yeah. Wendy, you had a question, comment?
Thank you, Eric. Yes, I have a comment and a question. I wanted to follow up on Jill's concern. I have a different take. I believe we need to understand our infrastructure planning of water and sewer together. I'm a village resident, I'm a water and sewer user, but I see water and sewer, that they go hand in hand. I've been involved in other municipalities where the billing is actually handled similarly, where there's a relationship, but by one department. There's a relationship between water use and sewer use. So as in terms of information, I really don't see how we can exclude one from the other. We don't have a sewer system without water. So that's just my 2 cents on these big decisions that we have coming up. Second, my question is about this plan and capacity for future connecting, so expansion. And one thing that I feel happened recently with the turning down of the school bond vote is too many questions on what the sewer system can handle or what we can handle. So my question is, what would potentially a new school connecting with a higher projected student capacity to the sewer system, how would that use up, quote, that 500 connection potential, as well as the other buildings that are currently on hold in the community? How much would that eat into the projected 500, that number? Did I make my question?
Yeah, and I can answer a little bit. I don't know what the projected student population for an expanded school is, so that's hard for me to know what your projected wastewater flows from that expanded.
Well, they're saying maybe 120 more students, like roughly they were working upwards.
Okay,
just roughly.
So let me get like big picture. The plant right now is operating at only 50% of its hydraulic capacity.
Okay.
So there is capacity at the plant. Previously Eric has asked us, like, well, how many units could we build? And there's more capacity than just 500. And I don't have the numbers. I wish I did at my fingertips, but basically you look at it, your threshold is 80% of your permitted capacity, which is your permitted capacity is 0.45 million gallons per day. You're operating at like 0.225. So there's a lot there, but you have to hold some in reserve. Like the state, if you start bumping up against 80% of that design capacity, that kicks you automatically into an upgrade kind of planning. So like I said before, there could be, the solution could be to ask for more of a discharge, more flow from your plant. And the design would allow that kind of phased incremental, capacity to meet that. But for the next 20 years, it has not been identified that you need to build this tankage that won't be used in the next 20 years. The cycle of a treatment plant is about 20 years for equipment. Tankage, sure, that lasts 50 plus years, concrete things, pipes in the ground, but the equipment itself with technology is really obsolete after about 20 years. Okay.
Thank you.
I'm not sure if that answered your question.
Well, I'm hearing that the current new properties that are waiting to go online with water and a projected possible building of an increased size school, there's room. I'm hearing we're not going to use up what you're planning.
Exactly. Like you're not going to be exceeding your permit on day one.
Got it. Thank you.
Wendy, I was on the aqueduct working group, and we were interested in who was using what percentage of water in the town, and the schools are a very small user of water, actually.
Thank you, Carrie, for that. Because I was wondering about, and as they projected their own expenses, what that looked like.
Yeah, so
in their
I think
budget.
I'm trying to find the breakout, but institutional users, that includes all the schools, the churches, it only uses 12.8% of the water
Okay.
annually.
Thank you. So my worries are not in that, are assuaged. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments, people publicly? Stephen?
Hey again, Stephen Bauer, Director of Planning and Zoning. So a couple things, we are continuously working on upgrading our planning. That is part of it. That is why I'm here. So what I hear is that the life cycle of a wastewater treatment plant is somewhere, some parts of it is 20, some parts is 40 up to 50. But the remaining questions that I want to work closely with Hoyle and Tanner is what is understanding what is the cost of the increased capacity now, paying for that increased capacity now, that if you were asking just my opinion, is coming. We don't know exactly how quickly and exactly how much, but it is coming. Paying for that now versus when we already get there. Is there a benefit? I like to hear that the design is planning for growth, and that there is a part. What my fear is do we submit a bond to the voters that 3 to 5 years from now, because all these planning, all this planning has come to, and we've been able to attract development? Do we then come back to the voters, and now that increased capacity for another tank is now going to cost an extra $10 to $20 million? We don't know that numbers. That's not a conversation that I've been having with Hoyle Tanner. The capacity for 500 connections sounds great, but I think we all know that the connections are not equal. A studio apartment does not require the same as a brewery. We're not just talking about adding capacity for just students or those students' families that move to the area. We're talking about industry. We're talking about where are those people going to work. There's going to be people that are added to the school. That's teachers, that's police officers, that's fire department, that's potentially manufacturing, that is breweries, restaurants, retail stores, all of those. We don't understand that because we haven't been necessarily talking about what is that actual growth. I love hearing that capacity for 500 connections, potentially more, that we're only at 50% capacity. That's a good thing. But what I can't hear and what I can't say right now is, if we add 2,000 people over the next 10 years, we absolutely have nothing to worry about at our main wastewater treatment plant. If we extend East End beyond the borders of the village, do we have the capacity to get wastewater to those units that go beyond that? So that's, again, not something that we know right now, but we need to be investigating. These are the questions that I have. So that capacity for growth may limit our ability. This is a concern or a fear, is does that capacity of growth, do we get to a point where we're potentially limiting our department, Eric, as a town to market Woodstock to potential developers? We need housing, continuously try and work with development. And one of the questions that always comes up is how's your capacity? I like the idea of relying on a statement from Hoyle Tanner to say, look, we've got capacity. But this is exactly how I know how much capacity we have. If you're looking to build 10 units, 20 units, 50 units, can I say with relative certainty, then 2 to 5 years, we can provide that. So that's just part of the thing as part of my job and things that I think about in planning for our future growth that keep me up at night. And so just questions that we still have and work that I'm willing to do. And I know Hoyle Tanner is willing to do, and you guys are too. So thank you.
I have a couple of just follow-ups to that. So we can totally work with your planning department to relook at projected growth over the next 20 years and beyond. We do this all the time for other communities. Here's a great example. City of Burlington is starting to do a lot of infill, looking for more housing. That's a huge goal of the city here. So like one of the projects I'm doing with the city is to look at the South End development area. I mean, we're projecting wastewater flow rates for multiple unit housing, student housing, restaurants, daycares, you name it, anything that's going to go in the South End quadrant. We're projecting flows out to 50 years from now. We're looking at their sewer capacity to see if they can even handle that additional flow. And so if I have, if I had like what kind of potential growth and number of units, if it's a studio, if it's a 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom, if it's a school, how many new students, restaurants, manufacturing, brewer, I can develop wastewater flow rates for you on a horizon for the next 20 years, 30, 40, 50. And that way you can make informed decisions about what you want to have your plan, build your plan out for. And I'm not saying doing it now, but we could also then look at, well, what would it cost you to build that third train, but not put the equipment in it, like the tankage? What would it cost you for that incremental increase in capacity, even though you're not necessarily asking the state for an expanded permit right now? Those are totally things that we can do.
I think that latter part's the key part as to why, through this, the project right now as it exists, because you still have capacity, you're not hitting at the edge of it right now. You do have, it'll take some time for the growth that was just discussed, that the needs currently are satisfied by the project as defined in the study, but allowing for that space and dashed out lines of where potential future growth could go. I think that I don't know if I would, and this comes into the strategy again, if you would bond for an additional amount that allows for future growth in a future project, you don't want to spend the money too much on stuff that you're not using yet. It just sits there and ages. So I think the goal is to maybe in the pipe sizing that we use throughout the plant, the network of things, or the pumps, or making sure that if it's a little bit of an increment in size to make sure you can handle future growth, that might be where, but building in the additional parts of the plant right now might not be the best use of the town's money. The other part too that to think about, along with it takes time to get the permit for your discharge permit, to increase that and to work with DEC and EPA as to what your limits would be associated with that, and then potentially bringing in Act 250. That's a process that takes time and comes with risk. So as far as doing that, that's down the road.
I do think, though, that there is a change of thought, and with communities in Act 250, and if established, you know more about this net in the planning department, but like if you have like a growth plan, like if you have a master plan in place, then I think that conversation is a little easier.
The other part to think about too with that, Steve, is The collection system and conveyance system, I think, it depends on where in the community and how you're getting it to the plant, and that comes with, so we can work, there's a lot more to discuss. Kirsten is the right person. She's done this in other communities, so maybe that's something we do through that. I think that would be an important thing to do through that public outreach process. We also, that user rate coordinating with the town on sewer use ordinance and user rate study, coordinating with your future growth plans so that those questions are properly responded to through the outreach, and it's not something that that lingers into the bond vote.
No, I could just add one thing. John, you and I traded emails about this, I think back in December. And you said, don't quote you, but I'm gonna kind of quote you on this, just a little bit. But the question I asked was if we tried to increase capacity by 1,000 connection to 2,000 connections, and you projected a rough estimate of the project going from 20 million to about 30 million at that time. So that's kind of just a idea of what the extra cost would be if we wanted to build in that capacity immediately. So that's just what we had talked
And
about.
that's back a napkin. I mean, we could do a cost estimate for a third train easily enough, but that was kind of like off the cuff.
Yeah.
Third train, third clarifier, and we were assuming tertiary.
Yeah.
So all of those components together, that 10 million.
Are there any other questions from the board members or members of the community? I think Wendy has one more. Wendy?
Thank you, Eric. I'm not quite sure who to address this question to, but my understanding is this wastewater treatment plant upgrade does not include what John just referred to as the passageways or conduits. But anyway, the pipes that lead to the plant.
Right, correct. It does not include any upgrades to your sewer collection system.
So my question to Eric and the select board is, how is our community going to address those future expenses and who pays for that? You don't have to answer me right now, this minute, but it's part of this bigger problem we're embracing.
Yeah, I think Wendy, we're focusing right now on the final design with Hoyle Tanner, but you are correct in, large picture, big picture, infrastructure needs of the community and how we fund those is something we've been talking about internally. And we'll continue to talk about as we go forward. Susan, you had a question?
Oh, so my understanding is our next step with Hoyle Tanner is to address the agreement between owner and engineering for professional services. And since I guess I just want to know, or I think it would be helpful to understand what agreement we're presently under and what this next step does.
Eric, do you want me to go or?
Yeah, John.
Okay, all right. Yeah, so currently we're not under agreement. We completed our last agreement at the closure of the step 1 preliminary engineering report. So what's in front of you right now, and it's kind of nicely packaged in step 1, step 2, step 3, the way the Water Investment Division looks at things and the CWSRF program. So what we have proposed in front of you is the step 2, the final design phase, and step 3 is construction phase. So this would allow us to be under contract with the town to begin working on those services and continue to push the project towards advancing through final design. And in the schedule, basically the schedule that we had proposed puts final design completion around the April of 2026 timeframe to allow for construction to begin. Maybe some elements in the summer of 26, but then going through 27 primarily, that would be the larger construction season. So Susan, did I answer that completely, or let me come back to your question, make sure I got that.
I think so, unless anyone else has questions. I think Eric had also mentioned, just kind of briefly talking about South Woodstock.
Oh.
Where there were concerns that that went over what was bonded, and I think you probably want to discuss your role in that.
Okay, so I can talk to that history. So the previous engineer, Stantec, performed a value analysis of the existing treatment facility and came up with alternatives and a cost estimate. That report was January of 2020. We were hired shortly thereafter in the spring to evaluate that report, do an analysis of it, and provide concurrence on the recommended project and the cost estimate. And we prepared a technical memo, a letter to the town with our review and our findings, and that was dated in March, actually about 4 years ago, March 17th, 2020. And in that report, we kind of looked at all of the different assumptions and recommended project and their opinion of cost, and identified in our letter the major deficiencies with that analysis. And I can talk to some of them. I don't like pointing out the flaws in another engineer's work, but the analysis was wholly inadequate. They did not include any mechanical screening for like a headworks to keep large items out of the treatment process. They did not include redundancy on blowers or pumps. They did not include the cost of the concrete for the SBR tanks. They did not include the cost to pump the wastewater flow up to an SBR. They did not consider that there was bedrock 8 feet below the ground surface, which would require pumping to a higher level. They did not include the constraints of the regulatory floodway, which shrinks the size of available land that the treatment practice could be placed on. They did not include the cost for disinfection. They were going to reuse the existing tankage, which did not meet Vermont state standards for disinfection nor redundancy. So those things, just those items, were needed to be added to the project. And then I forwarded this letter, our letter, to Eric, and he could share it with you on how we found that presentation not adequate to suit the needs for this treatment facility.
And it had already gone to bond, right?
It had already gone to bond.
Right, got involved.
I can
So
make a
basically, I say publicly, Hoyle Tanner was not responsible for the overage on the South Woodstock bond and the cost of that.
And if I could make a request for the minutes to stricken the name of the other firm, I don't think it's fair.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I know you didn't mean to, but I don't think it's fair to, I think Kirsten laid out all the reasons why the bond was inadequate, and I think that's fair. I just don't want to
Yep, I apologize.
not allow them to speak up for themselves. I don't know what went into their study, nor, yeah, no, you're fine, Kirsten. Just, if that could be done, I think that's fair to them.
Yeah, that's fine.
And can I ask one more question before we, I think, conclude this? Is it possible for analysis and a cost estimate to be added to the agreement for increased pipe size, increased pump size, updated collection system, a third pump holding station, increased capacity permits? So is that possible, like after the board technically signs this, or is it?
Yeah, we can work, so there's still, you don't need to sign this today, actually, like this, so we need actually approval from the Water Investment Division. It's with Wynn Wilson. He's started his review last week. We just got to get some comments back. Typically, they're very minor comments, but then we can make slight adjustments. I could add in a scope line to work with the town and with Stephen around the growth plans and future projections. So we have a foundation of what that should be, Kirsten. I think that would be properly done in this pre-design phase before, and it's good to do prior to the bond vote so that it shows that's been accounted for in what the town is voting for. So yeah, Kirsten, I think I could work with you to come up with a good list of scope. It doesn't have to be, it wouldn't be a large change in percentage of the contract value. So I think what we'd be hoping for today would be for the town to vote to allow Eric to move forward with signing the engineering agreement, provided the CWSRF program supports it, and within like maybe a range of like, you know, not to exceed another $100,000 above whatever, but what we had in there, but giving that comfort level. I think we're gonna be less than that. I just want, if that's how this could work for Eric to be able to move forward, that could speed things up, or we could wait till the next meeting.
Well, the next step was to enter executive session to talk about.
Right, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right,
you.
thank you.
I'll make
Good to see you all.
an executive session under one BSA 13A1A, discuss contract, it will specific finding of premature general public knowledge that clearly place the public body or a person involved in substantial disadvantage.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. You're going to the bathroom? Yeah.
We're all here.
Yeah, we're all. Because we are open to the public, people will be.
Not gonna take a vote.
No.
Right.
I move we adjourn.
There's minutes.
Oh, minutes, sorry. Premature.
So Susan did have 1 or 2 corrections that she sent to us ahead of time that Nikki has updated. It's not in the packet, but it will be shown in the final minutes, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I didn't send that to everybody.
No, I believe it was just to me and I
Yeah.
forwarded it along to Nikki.
So the only changes were that, it listed someone present that I think it was actually a parent that was present. And then the, Proudy parade permit was conditioned on an insurance certificate. Yes. So, great.
Those have been made. Need a motion to approve the minutes. Second,
And to be clear, it's the minutes, because there's 2 sets of minutes, or corrections we're just on one. So the minutes are February 2nd and February 10th.
Those February meeting.
is there a second?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion to adjourn,
So moved.
second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Is adjourned.